Power and information have always been intertwined throughout history. From the dawn of civilization, those who controlled knowledge also held the keys to influence and command. But as we march into the age of artificial intelligence, AI, the dynamics of power are changing. AI is not just another tool in our technological arsenal. It has become an agent in itself, capable of making decisions and potentially altering human existence. This evolution demands that we carefully consider how we manage this power. After all, history has shown us that power, when uncontrolled, can lead to disastrous consequences. This video was inspired by the book Nexus by the author Yuval Noah Harari. Please note some chapters will be left out in this video. Chapter 1. What is information? Information is a double-edged sword. While it can provide insight and clarity, it can also be misleading if not interpreted correctly. Let's say you hear there are 10,000 soldiers marching. That one piece of information doesn't tell you everything. Are they experienced veterans, or are they new recruits? Are they alert and ready for battle, or are they exhausted after a long march? The truth is often more complex than a single fact. That's why how we interpret information is crucial to understanding the full picture. Misinformation happens when someone misunderstands reality, often without meaning to. For instance, a rumor about a storm heading toward a city might spread like wildfire, causing panic, even though the storm is miles away. This kind of mistake can lead to unnecessary confusion or fear. On the other hand, disinformation is a deliberate lie intended to mislead. Governments, corporations, and even individuals can spread disinformation to control narratives and manipulate others for personal gain. Whether rooted in reality or not, information always has connections. Think of it like a puzzle. One piece alone doesn't show you the whole image, but when you put enough pieces together, the picture becomes clearer. The way we make these connections can dramatically shape our perception of the world. This is why it's so important to approach information critically, always questioning its source and context. Chapter 2. Stories. Unlimited connection stories have always been the most powerful way to communicate ideas, and they can connect billions of people across the globe. Think about it. Every brand you know, every famous person you admire, and even every product you buy is tied to a story. Whether it's the story of success, struggle, innovation, or triumph, it's the narrative that people connect with, not just the facts. However, stories can either unite or divide. Take, for example, historical events. The way one country tells the story of its past can be very different from the way another country tells the same story. These differences can create conflict, misunderstandings, or even fuel nationalism. Changing the story or understanding someone else's version of it can be the key to fostering unity or driving deeper wedges between us. According to some thinkers, information must do two things to benefit humanity. First, it must seek the truth, and second, it must create order. This is where bureaucracy comes into play. Bureaucracy, a term that originated in France, essentially refers to systems that store and transfer information. These systems can either help or hinder progress. For instance, governments often rely on massive amounts of documentation to keep society running smoothly. But when bureaucratic systems become clogged, they create bottlenecks that slow everything down. This is why revolutions don't just target leaders. They aim to destroy documents and bureaucratic systems to erase debts, records, and history. Chapter 3. Information and power. When institutions cling to power, they often do so by controlling access to information. Centuries ago, the church held a monopoly on knowledge, using this control to maintain authority over the masses. This limitation of information stifled intellectual growth and imprisoned minds. As a result, progress stalled, and people were trapped in cycles of ignorance. Worse still, bad information has a tendency to snowball. A mistaken understanding can lead to more mistakes, and without a mechanism for self-correction, societies risk being stuck in a loop of flawed thinking. So, how do we break free from this trap? By creating systems that allow for constant feedback and improvement. One key strategy is feedback loops. These loops help us learn from our mistakes by providing continuous input on our progress. For instance, athletes rely on feedback from coaches to fine-tune their performance, and students benefit from teacher feedback to improve their understanding of a subject. By regularly assessing our work and seeking feedback, we can correct errors before they spiral out of control. Another important concept is deliberate practice. This involves breaking down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable parts and focusing on the areas where we struggle the most. By continuously practicing and improving in these areas, we can develop mastery over time. Lastly, metacognition, or thinking about our own thinking, allows us to monitor our learning process. By regularly evaluating what we know, identifying gaps in our understanding, and adjusting our strategies accordingly, we create a system that encourages growth and self-correction. These tools, feedback loops, deliberate practice, and metacognition, form the foundation of a self-correcting mechanism that can help us avoid the pitfalls of bad information. Chapter 5. Decisions. A brief history of democracy and totalitarianism. Democracy, for all its strengths, has a critical weakness: it can be easily manipulated. Leaders who rise to power through democratic means can sometimes use that power to undermine the system itself. History is full of examples where elected officials have turned democratic institutions into instruments of authoritarian control. For democracy to function properly, there must be a balance of power. Independent institutions, such as academia and the media, must be free to pursue truth without interference from the government. When institutions are allowed to check one another, transparency is maintained, and the system is held accountable. One of democracy's greatest dangers is when people stop listening to each other. Open dialogue is essential for a healthy democracy, but when voices are silenced, either by the government or by societal pressure, the system begins to break down. Tyranny often emerges when power becomes too centralized, and decisions are made without input from the people. Tyrants may believe that they can control everything, but they often underestimate the resilience of human will. Oppression and injustice may seem to quash resistance, but they actually fuel it. Every revolution is born from a desire to fight back against unfairness and reclaim dignity. But almost every revolution comes another dictator. First, they claim it is for the people, then they usually claim power for themselves. Tyrants forget that they are human too, and that the human spirit, when pushed to its limits, will fight back to protect what it values most. In today's world, technology has changed the nature of this battle. In 2010, the war for control shifted online, where our attention became the most valuable commodity. The same technology that enables democracy to flourish also has the power to undermine it. When governments or corporations control the flow of information, they can shape our perceptions, making it harder for us to distinguish truth from manipulation. Chapter 7. Relentless. The network is always on in today's digital age. The networks we rely on are constantly collecting data about us. Every click, every search, and every post adds to a growing pool of information that companies and governments use to understand our behavior. This information is used to predict our actions, tailor ads to our preferences, and even influence our decisions. But the fact that data exists doesn't necessarily mean it's truthful. Take, for example, the rise of social media algorithms that show us content we're likely to engage with. These systems are designed to keep us on platforms as long as possible, but they often do so by feeding us information that reinforces our existing beliefs. This creates echo chambers where we only see one side of an issue, making it harder to have open, balanced discussions. As a result, information doesn't just connect us, it can also divide us. Chapter 8. Fallible. The network is often wrong. In his book on war, Karl von Clausewitz emphasized the importance of having a clear goal before engaging in conflict. This idea applies beyond warfare to any large-scale endeavor. Leaders throughout history have fallen into the trap of believing that victory is the only goal. But what happens after the battle is won? If there's no long-term objective, the victory can feel hollow. Conquerors who focused on short-term wins without considering the minds and hearts of the people they conquered often found that their rule was unsustainable. To succeed in the long run, leaders must consider not only the physical control of a population but also the emotional and intellectual connection they establish. As Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, "To handle yourself, use your head; to handle others, use your heart." The wisest leaders recognize that they don't know everything. Admitting that is the first step toward wisdom, as Aristotle taught us. In the modern era, we have created incredibly powerful systems, democratic or authoritarian, that can shape the future of entire nations. But the question remains: will these systems serve the people, or will they impose control upon them? Chapter 9. Democracies. Can we still hold a conversation? Democracy depends on open communication, yet we are increasingly losing the ability to have real conversations. When information flows in only one direction, from those in power to the public, democracy suffers. The more centralized and controlled information becomes, the harder it is for citizens to engage in meaningful dialogue about important issues. For democracy to survive, two things must happen. First, people must be able to discuss key issues openly and freely. Second, there must be trust in the institutions that maintain order and stability. When trust breaks down, the system becomes vulnerable to manipulation and collapse. Chapter 11. The Silicon Curtain. Global empire. The global flow of information has fundamentally changed the way we think about power. Today, multinational corporations wield as much influence as some governments. Silicon Valley, in particular, has become a hub for the creation and control of the most valuable commodity, data. Tech companies have the ability to shape public opinion, alter behavior, and even change the course of political events. These companies often operate with minimal oversight, leading to questions about accountability and transparency. As we move forward into the era of AI, the balance between individual freedoms and corporate control will become even more delicate. How we choose to navigate this landscape will determine the future of our societies. Will AI serve humanity, or will it become a tool of oppression? From the Stone Age to the digital age, power has always been tied to the control of information. As AI systems grow more advanced, they offer us unprecedented opportunities to enhance human potential. But with these opportunities come great risks. If we allow the systems to act without oversight, they could become tools of oppression, limiting freedom and truth. As we stand on the brink of a new era, it is up to us to shape the future of power. By fostering open dialogue, promoting transparency, and maintaining a balance between control and freedom, we can ensure that AI serves the greater good. After all, the most important thing we can do is ensure that humanity remains at the heart of progress.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.